the morning, top of 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 the morning. Hold on.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicholas Hill and welcome into the Instant Review podcast where we discuss weekly NFL news, injury reports, fantasy football, upcoming game predictions, sports betting lines, and much, much more. We'll be hearing from our analysts on the latest from around the National Football League. Week 4 is almost in the books as we await the Monday Night Football game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers out in the desert. We are starting to get a picture of who will be the contenders and who are the pretenders. To share a brief recap with everything that happened in Week 4, we are going to toss it over to my man, Leon Taryan.
Thank you, Nick, for having me back. There's a lot to recap as we finish Week 4 of NFL action. First off, both the New York Jets and New York Giants win their first games of the season in overtime. A big surprise since they both face teams with winning records. Hopefully, both teams can grow and bring more of a competitiveness to their divisions. Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Cordero Patterson caught 5 passes for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns. He could catch the ball, run the ball, and even return kicks. He is a solid flex option for Atlanta. Chiefs star receiver Tyreek Hill also had 3 touchdowns on 11 catches for 186 yards. The Chiefs look to use this win to build on their talent-filled offense. Next up, the Bills shut out the Texans 40-0. The Bills' offense and defense looks dominant, while Houston struggles without Tyrod Taylor. The big storyline is Tom Brady's return to New England against his former coach, Bill Belichick. The final score of the game was 19-17 with Tampa Bay winning. Brady knocked off his former coach and delivered a win for his team against him. Lastly, the Arizona Cardinals and Las Vegas Raiders are the undefeated teams left in the league. Kyler Murray and Derek Carr are both playing phenomenal in the 2021-2022 NFL season.
Yeah, it's interesting to think, too, that at the end of tonight, the Arizona Cardinals might be the last team left undefeated. But I want to go back to that very hyped matchup in Foxborough between the Buccaneers and the Patriots, and especially that reunion between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, because at the end of the game, it was a very, very cold hug. It only lasted about 3 seconds. And we know all the rumors from their time together of how they had a falling out over the past couple of years their time together. So, Leon, when you saw that, and you saw the way that game unfolded, do you think there's still bad blood between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick?
I think the bad blood between them is overhyped in a way. I do still think they get along, and after 20 years, they still have a strong relationship with each other. Brady wishes the best for Belichick and vice versa. So I think both teams will grow even without each other. I think Mac Jones played a great game, even though it was filled with more of defensive performances than offensive performances. But it was a great game overall, and I can't wait to see these two match up against each other again.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see at least one more of these. But another question I want to ask you about those Arizona Cardinals. They've started off 4-0. They've had 2 dominating performances, one against my Tennessee Titans, and yesterday against the Los Angeles Rams, who I thought were the best team in the NFL. But I'm going to ask you, Leon, because I'm starting to think this. Are the Arizona Cardinals the best team in the NFL right now?
Right now, I would say the Arizona Cardinals are the best team in the NFL. I would like to see a matchup against the Buccaneers to see how they would fare against the reigning Super Bowl champs. But Kyler Murray might find his first MVP trophy. He really is playing well this year, and the offense is improving with him.
Absolutely. So now it is time for our weekly segment here on the Instant Review podcast. Our players of the week. I'm going to start with you, Leon. Who caught your eye in Week 4?
Caught my eye, definitely Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs versus Eagles matchup just proved that the Chiefs' 2 losses early on the season was just a fluke. They are improving, and Mahomes with 4 touchdowns, Hill with 3, and the offense is just gelling together. And I think they could still be dangerous in the AFC playoffs.
And quickly, I want to bring in Oscar Arango. Oscar, who is your player of the week?
Nick, thank you for having me on. My player of the week is Cordero Patterson, running back with the Falcons. Cordero, he's filling in for Mike Davies, taking a lot of his reps. He's doing it on the ground. He's doing it in the air. Very impressive. This is a guy who's played in very different positions. He came into the league. It's awesome to see him cook. So happy to see Cordero Patterson.
Well, thank you, Oscar. My player of the week is one Ezekiel Elliott. 20 carries, 143 yards, a touchdown. Had a 47-yard run, his longest since rookie year. He's finally starting to live up to his $90 million contract that he signed before the beginning of last year. And it's starting to spell the questions of, is he washed? Is he done as an elite running back? But if Ezekiel continues to show this rejuvenated spirit throughout the rest of the season, combined with Dak Prescott and that amazing passing game that Dallas has had, combined with an improved defense, don't be surprised if we're asking, how about them Cowboys in February? So, first and foremost, I wanted to thank you, Leon, for giving us a rundown of some of the top NFL headlines after Week 4.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, with the action comes numerous injuries, some with big consequences. With an injury report, here is Oscar Arango.
So thank you for having me, Nick. Let's go over the injuries that happened this week and how they're going to affect their respective teams. For the Chicago Bears, we have David Montgomery, a running back. He suffered a hyperextended knee during one of the plays this week. Still nothing on how serious it is, but we're waiting in an MRI. So it's possible to suspect some type of structural damage that can hold him back 2 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, depending on how bad he probably is injured. But his backup, Damian Williams, did great covering up for him. 70 yards on 8 rushes and 2 receptions. So something to look at on the waiver wire, perhaps. Washington football team suffered injury to Logan Thomas, who hurt his hamstring. Now, we know hamstrings can be problematic. Tight end is a very explosive position. You got to block, you got to run routes. So depending on how bad it is, we probably won't see him next week. In his stead, we can expect Ricky Seals-Jones filling in. Ricky Seals-Jones is a very athletic tight end who doesn't seem to have found a good home yet in football. Hopefully he can shine this week coming up. Denver Broncos suffered an injury to Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, suffered a concussion. In his stead, we can expect longtime backup quarterback Drew Lock filling in. Something to keep in mind, the Denver Broncos are more of a run-first type of team, so we can see them probably lean more on Melvin Gordon and rookie Javonte Williams at running backs. So something to look forward to next week. The San Francisco 49ers also suffered an injury to their quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo as a calf injury. Trey Lance covered in very well for him this week, and if Jimmy doesn't come up, we can expect a big performance for Trey Lance coming up. New Orleans Saints suffered an injury to backup running back Tony Jones Jr. Expect Dwayne Washington come in as the main backup for Alvin Kamara. The Titans suffered an injury to Josh Reynolds' first year with the Rams, coming from the Rams, suffered a knee injury. Something to keep in mind with the Titans, they have a depleted wide receiver group. Just remember Julio Jones and A.J. Brown were hurt last week with hamstring injury. The Cowboys suffered an injury to their wide receiver group in Amari Cooper. He suffers from both hamstring and rib injuries. We can see Cedric Wilson and Dalton Schultz filling in for him. With the Jaguars, DJ Shark, wide receiver, suffered from an ankle injury. He actually made it into the injured reserve. We can see that this probably means more rest for Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault. And then player coming back for this week, which would be good to see, Elijah Moore with the Jets, wide receiver, coming back from concussion. He didn't play week 3. And hopefully he comes back for week 4. And that's my injury report for week 4.
All right, so I definitely want to circle back around to those 2 quarterbacks that were injured yesterday, Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater. Obviously, anytime you have a quarterback injured on a team, it's going to be the biggest story of the day, let alone having 2 go down in the 4 o'clock window yesterday. So when you look at these 2 quarterbacks that went down between Garoppolo and Bridgewater, which one do you think is a bigger loss to their team respectively, the 49ers or the Broncos? And obviously you got the 3rd overall pick, and Trey Lance is going to have to pick up the slack. And you have Drew Lock as well, who has been a maligned quarterback who's been much criticized, but now seems like he might have a second chance to redeem himself in Denver. So who do you think is the bigger loss? And between Lance and Lock, who do you think will do better in relief?
I think Bridgewater is definitely the bigger loss. I think Jimmy Garoppolo has had a lot of rumors behind him this season about him getting replaced by Trey Lance. And a lot of fans have kind of been on a wait and see type of approach for what's going to happen to Jimmy. When is Jimmy going to step down and Trey Lance going to have his coming to of his era? For Drew Lock's had a lot of opportunities. He had some opportunities last year. He didn't shine. Hopefully he is better prepared. He is ready for it. But definitely having Bridgewater is a big loss to this team. And again, keep in mind, this is a run-first team. So passing wasn't a big thing, but it's a big hit to lose your starting quarterback. Hopefully Drew Lock steps up, but it looks a lot better for Trey Lance in terms of projections for next week.
I would agree with you on that. But also, missed in all the quarterback injuries is David Montgomery's injury for the Bears. And this might be a bigger loss for Chicago overall, because if you look at their offense recently, it's been really, really bad. Now, yesterday they did pretty well, but they were playing the Detroit Lions. And over the next month, they're going to go to the Raiders, home against the Packers, at the Bucks, home against the San Francisco 49ers. It's not a time where you want to lose your best offensive weapon, and David Montgomery, especially when you have a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields, who is talented, but obviously he's still learning, and a much criticized play caller in Matt Nagy. So how do you think the Chicago Bears are going to move forward with this tough schedule in hand without their star running back in David Montgomery?
It sounds a lot like the perfect storm, right? It sounds like it sucks to be a Bears fan. I think when you look at it, we hope Justin Fields can step up. The running back group is depleted. Their wide receivers depleted. Allen Robertson isn't really doing very much in their wide receiver group. So we hope they step up, but it looks bleak. It looks bleak for the Chicago Bears. It was already a rebuilding season, and it's just getting rougher. So good luck to them.
Yeah. So with all these injuries in mind, it's time to shift over to fantasy football with you, Oscar, and recap who had a monster week 4.
There you go. Happy talk. So we're starting off with our best top 5 performances for this week. Tyreek Hill at 47 points, standard scoring. This guy had 11 receptions, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns, just going off, leading everybody in football this week. He's doing great. Deebo Samuel, also another wide receiver with the 49ers, coming back from injury. He kind of had a slow start. Gets 8 receptions for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cordero Patterson, hot guy, already mentioned a couple of times today, coming with the Falcons, 34.6 points. 6 carries, 34 yards, but he did in the air too. 5 receptions, 82 yards, and 3 catching touchdowns. Awesome. Great to see. And then we got DJ Moore with the Panthers. They also got really hot. 8 receptions for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes, who's feeding Tyreek Hill, gets 278 yards and 5 touchdowns. As our top 3 surprise performances, we already mentioned Deebo Samuel coming back, working with quarterback Trey Lance, 156 yards, 2 scores. He led the wide receiver pack for his 4th time this week. And like I said, he had a great connection with Trey Lance when he came in. So hopefully we see that follow through if we can't get Jimmy Garoppolo next week. Deontay Johnson with the Steelers. He came back from a knee injury. My boy catches 9 passes, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Awesome. Also see a guy come back from injury and do well. Corey Davis, kind of a traveling guy, wide receiver, hard to get hot. In a revenge game versus the Jets, with the Jets versus the Titans, gets 4 catches, 111 yards against his old team. So real good. Real happy for him.
Yeah, I was really happy for him. I've always liked Corey Davis. Thought he got kind of a rough deal in Tennessee, so good to see him starting to go off in New York. But for this upcoming week here in week 5, Oscar, who are your waiver wire picks?
Well, top of the lineup, we got running back Chuba Hubbard being very serviceable with Christian McCaffrey out of the game. Hopefully he keeps up with that if Christian McCaffrey can't come in. Sam Darnold, getting hot with the Panthers. He got to feed DJ Moore 200 yards and rush for 2 touchdowns, so something to look into. Alexander Mattison, running back, filling in for Dalvin Cook, did great and filling in for him. So if Dalvin Cook can't go, look at Alexander Mattison. Naeem Hines, Colts running back. He's definitely eating up at Jonathan Taylor's work, and he's getting bigger reps. He's a receiving running back. He's getting a lot of action, something to look into. At wide receivers, we have Jacoby Myers from the Patriots and Cole Beasley from the Bills. Both of them are playing big roles in their passing. They have quarterbacks that can feed them, offenses that need the help. So hopefully we keep seeing them doing well.
Yeah. And also, I would like to add a staff waiver wire pick. Eagles running back Kenneth Gainwell. He had 8 targets yesterday out of the backfield, 6 catches, 58 yards receiving, and also had a rushing touchdown off of 9 carries and 31 yards. The Eagles are continuing to increase his role. He's the clear RB2 to Miles Sanders. If he continues to perform this well, he may end up being RB1 eventually. So if he's still on the waiver wire in your league, definitely go pick him up, especially if you need some running back depth. Kenneth Gainwell for the Philadelphia Eagles, definitely becoming a security blanket for Jalen Hurts. But thank you so much, Oscar, for your input on fantasy and your injury report.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Now, Instant Review Podcast. Do you want to make some money? Because let's discuss some opening spreads for Week 5 matchups. Here is Conor Kennedy.
All right, I'm going to talk about the Rams. In the Seahawks game, the Rams are 1-point favorites, and the over-under is 54.5 points. Now this Rams team is coming off their first L, playing the Arizona Cardinals, who might be the best team in the NFC, honestly. And the Seattle Seahawks are coming off a bounce-back dub playing the 49ers. Now, both offenses are great, but it'll be harder to let Russ cook with this Rams defense. And I think Stafford will shred through the Seattle secondary and win this game where they should be favored by more than 1 point, if I'm being honest here. So this next team we're going to talk about is the Denver Broncos versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. These Steelers are favored by 1 point in this matchup, and the over-under is 41. Now the Broncos are coming off their first L of the season, playing their toughest opponent so far, the Baltimore Ravens. While the wheels have fallen off this Pittsburgh Steelers offense since their Week 1 win playing Buffalo, and they've gone 0-3 since then. Now, both defenses are stout, and the Steelers' pass rush is going to be challenging for Teddy Two Gloves and his safe side of play. But I think that offense is still better than whatever's going on in Pittsburgh right now. I'm going with the Broncos to win this game. Now, the third matchup that I'm going to talk about is between the Cleveland Browns and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Cleveland Browns are favored by 0.5 point, and the over-under is 49.5. Now, this is a pretty equal matchup of two teams who I expect to see in the playoffs this year. The Browns' offense includes the best running back tandem in the league, and Baker Mayfield in a game manager role always does what he can to ensure that his team can win. Both defenses are stout, with generational talent Myles Garrett being a dominant pass rusher for this Browns team, while Bosa is the Chargers star player on a defense that includes potential Defensive Rookie of the Year Asante Samuel Jr. in their secondary. This looks like it could be a close one, but I'm going to go with the Chargers based simply on Justin Herbert's level of play, especially these past few weeks. Now this last game I'm going to talk about, probably the marquee matchup of this whole week. Sunday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs face off in an AFC Championship game rematch. Now the Bills started off shaky Week 1 playing the Steelers, but they bounced back thanks to their stellar defense, 2 shutouts already, and 2 40 burgers that they dropped, as well as improved play from Josh Allen and their offense. Now, the Chiefs played well in Week 1 playing the Browns, and last week playing the Eagles, but they didn't look like the reigning AFC champions playing the Ravens and the Chargers. With a terrible defense apart from a couple playmakers, including the Honey Badger and Frank Clark, Patrick Mahomes throwing some bad picks, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbling the ball quite a bit. I'm going to go with the 3-point underdog Bills to avenge their AFC Championship loss based on how their defense is much improved from last year. This pass rush is crazy in Buffalo, and they're going to get after Patrick Mahomes quite a bit. And with how the offense has bounced back for the most part from a shaky first couple weeks, I think it'll be a shootout, but the Bills, I think, could win it all at the end of this game. And those are my Week 5 matchups.
I do want to circle back around to that Bills-Chiefs matchup. That was the AFC Championship rematch from last year, and one of the most hyped-up games of the entire season. I want to focus on the Chiefs, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, how I'm no longer a believer in the Kansas City Chiefs, primarily because of their defense. They've given up at least 29 points in every single game this year, including letting up another another massive amount of points this past week, 30 points to the Eagles. So, how should bettors account for this when they bet on the Chiefs? Obviously, we still know what they've got in offense with Patrick Mahomes and company, but I would be nervous to bet on the Kansas City Chiefs moving forward. And when it comes to this over-under, it's 57, which is high in itself for an NFL game. But should overs in Chiefs games just be an automatic bet at this point for bettors?
Well, like you said earlier, this Chiefs offense is elite. That's how it's going to be when Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill are on your team. But this Chiefs defense has always not been that great, at least these past couple years. Of course, the Honey Badger and Frank Clark are playmakers, but aside from that, they're pretty shaky. And the reason why the Chiefs have been losing these games is because, well, obviously their defense can't hold their opponent to enough points, and the Chiefs' offense is these guys are starting to make mistakes, and these guys know that whenever the Chiefs have the ball, most of the time they're going to score. So when there's any mistake, the other team's got to capitalize on it. And this Bills team could lock up the first seed in the AFC, and their defense is stout. So they know what kind of offense this Chiefs team has, and they're going to capitalize on any mistakes that these players make. So I think bettors should account for that, definitely, for sure. And I think if you bet on the Bills, it might be a good payday. Who knows?
I'm interested to see if the Raiders are still undefeated by the time this game happens. But another question I want to ask you about, a game you didn't mention. It's a game in London at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The first time the NFL's going to London since 2019 before the pandemic. The Atlanta Falcons and the New York Jets. Not a great matchup on paper, but we saw the New York Jets beat my Tennessee Titans yesterday, much to my personal embarrassment. And then the Atlanta Falcons just getting off to a horrific start to the season. The Falcons, though, are 3.5-point favorites, despite the Jets seemingly having the momentum. So when you look at a unique game like this, it's across the pond. It's going to be a 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, starts 2:30 over in the United Kingdom. How should a better approach a unique game like this?
Well, it's definitely interesting, especially considering how they've done the past couple weeks. Personally, I think the Jets only won that game because A.J. Brown and Julio Jones were out. A similar thing happened with the Jets last season when a lot of the wide receiving core with the Cleveland Browns were out, and that's how they won that game. Of course, quite a bit of a different team now with the Jets this season from last season, but they're both not very good. But I think one factor that really impacts this game is the fact that it's kind of like a neutral site. Both of these teams haven't really played here before, and if they did, it was a much different roster. And a lot of the people that are going to come out for this game might not be Jets fans or Falcons fans, or might not even care all that much about the NFL. It's going to be fans of all different teams, just regular fans of sport in general. And I don't think it's either going to be a favorable or a hostile environment for either team. So it might be easier for these offenses to kind of cook, depending on, this crowd noise that's going to be there in this game. That's the only thing that really impacts it, for me though.
All right. Well, thank you so much, for your, sports gambling segment.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
With that being said, that is all for the Instant Review podcast. We will see you again next week when we recap all NFL-based news, injury reports, fantasy predictions, and much, much more after Week 5 of NFL action. Thank you so much for listening, and take care.
Top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning.